Nobody saw this coming. Nobody put it on their bingo card. Nobody circled it on their predictions board or flagged it in their tournament preview as the match to watch. And yet, in the days leading up to one of the most electric second-round showdowns in recent WTA memory, something genuinely extraordinary happened. The analysts spoke, the former champions weighed in, the tennis experts who have spent their entire professional lives watching this sport at the highest level sat down, looked at the matchup, looked at the form, looked at the numbers, looked at the crowd situation in Dubai, and arrived at a conclusion that would have sounded completely insane 6 months ago. Alex Eala, ranked outside the top 40, 20 years old, the first and only Filipino to ever play at this level, was the clear favorite, not a dark horse, not an interesting pick, the clear favorite, over Jasmine Paolini, world number 8, former Dubai champion, French Open and Wimbledon finalist. And then she went out onto that center court under the Dubai lights, in front of a stadium that had turned into something that felt more like Manila than the Middle East. And she proved every single one of them right. Before we walk through every extraordinary moment of this match and everything that led up to it, I need to hear from you right now. If you watched this unfold, if you felt your chest tighten in that second set tiebreak, if you had your hands together during those 5 match points, tap that like button right now and drop Eala, Eala, Eala in the comments, because that is exactly what those thousands of Filipinos in that stadium were chanting when it mattered most. And if you are one of the people who believed before this match, before the experts started talking, before the draw was even made, that Alex Eala was going to win this thing, comment "I knew it" right now so the whole community knows you are riding with her from the beginning. And if you believe that what we are watching right now with Alex Eala is the beginning of something truly generational, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel, because the story is only getting bigger from here. Now let us go through all of it, because this match, this moment, this entire build-up deserves to be told the way it actually happened. Let us start with the experts, because the way the tennis world was talking before this match even began tells you everything about how dramatically the narrative around Alex Eala has shifted. One respected analyst who covers the WTA Tour extensively came out in the days before the match and put it plainly. He said he was going with Eala on a limb, as he put it, for a close 3-setter. He said he thought it would go down to the wire, but that Eala's extra rest time and Paolini's struggles with form made the Philippine star the one to back. He pointed out something that separates this matchup from other difficult draws Eala had recently faced. He noted that unlike her round of 16 match in Abu Dhabi earlier in the month, where she was overpowered by a bigger, more physical opponent, that was not going to be the problem against Paolini. Paolini is not a power player. Her game is built on speed, angles, hustle, and relentlessness. And against a player like Eala, who has shown the ability to control court geometry and dictate the terms of baseline exchanges, that style matchup was always going to be complicated for the Italian. The expert went with Eala. He was right, but even he might not have predicted just how one-sided the opening set was going to be. Another commentator who followed Eala's journey through the Middle East swing was even more direct. He said Paolini simply was not playing that great, and that her form leading into this match gave Eala a genuine opportunity to pull off an upset. That word upset sat in the conversation for days, and it is worth pausing on, because at what point does it stop being an upset and start being the expected result? At what point does beating a top 10 player stop being a surprise and start being the kind of thing that Eala's supporters have learned to quietly expect? That conversation is happening right now across social media, across tennis commentary channels, across every platform where this sport gets discussed. And it is happening because of what she did in Dubai on the night of February 17th, 2026. But before we get to that match, we need to back up to the first round against Hailey Baptiste, because understanding what Eala showed in that match is essential to understanding why the experts were so confident heading into the Paolini clash. The Baptiste match was supposed to be a legitimate test. It was the kind of first-round encounter where a player can either confirm that they belong at this level or expose the gap between their ranking and the expectations placed on them. Eala did not just confirm she belonged. She gave an early masterclass in tactical tennis that made the analysts who were watching sit up immediately. From the very first game, Eala came out with a game plan that was devastatingly simple on paper, but brutally difficult to execute under pressure. She directed her shots to the widest parts of the court, pulling Baptiste side to side relentlessly, never allowing her to plant her feet and load up on the powerful ground strokes that define her game. The strategy was precise. It was calculated. It was, for a 20-year-old, almost unsettlingly mature, because what Eala was doing was not just winning points. She was engineering a psychological collapse. When you are forced to sprint to retrieve ball after ball, when the court feels like it keeps expanding on you, when no matter how fast you run, there is always another ball going the other way, you do not just get physically tired. You start to lose belief. You start to feel like the game is rigged against you. And that feeling, once it settles in, is almost impossible to shake in the middle of a match. While Baptiste was running, Eala was controlling. Her own shots were narrow and precise, hugging lines, offering nothing easy to redirect, no wide angles to punish. It was a court geometry lesson delivered by someone who was supposed to be the underdog. And then Baptiste suffered the injury in the second set that forced her retirement, and Eala did something that immediately won over the entire crowd and every fan watching online. She stood at the net and said she did not want to win like that. She acknowledged she had played well. She said she felt her game was there, that the first set was everything she had worked for. But she made it clear, with honesty, that you simply cannot coach into a player, that no real competitor wants to advance because their opponent could not physically continue. That moment of grace, that emotional transparency in a spotlight where most players would simply be relieved to be through, told the tennis world something important about who this person is. And it set the tone for everything that followed. Now let us talk about Jasmine Paolini, because to fully appreciate what Eala accomplished on February 17th, you need to understand the state of the player she walked onto the court against. Paolini is not just a world number 8 who had a bad week. She arrived in Dubai carrying the kind of form that raises serious questions in the coaching box and the press room simultaneously. At the Australian Open, she walked in as a top 10 seed and lost to Ostapenko while looking physically and mentally drained from practically the opening games. Observers noted it. They described it. The match was not just a loss. It was a loss that looked like a player who had hit a wall and was not sure how to climb back over it. But the Australian Open can be explained away. Long season, brutal draw, a great opponent on the right day. Those things happen to the best players in the world. So the real question was, what would happen next when Paolini came out at the Qatar Open and had the chance to reset, recalibrate, and remind the tennis world why she earned her ranking? The answer was not what anyone wanted to see. She was eliminated in the very first round by Maria Zakharova, a player ranked outside the top 50. First round, world number 8, out in round 1 to someone ranked below 50 in the world. Back-to-back early exits, both on hard courts, both against lower-ranked opponents. That is not a bad week. That is a pattern. And patterns in professional tennis have a way of compounding unless something changes, fundamentally in the preparation, the mindset, or both. None of those changes appeared to arrive before Dubai. And so Paolini walked onto that center court on February 17th, carrying the weight of 2 consecutive early exits, a serving game that had been misfiring, and a confidence level that the match would prove to be running on empty. Eala, by contrast, was coming in rested, focused, backed by a crowd that was already treating the match like a national holiday, and carrying the momentum of a form curve that had been pointing sharply upward for a year. And then the match began. And almost immediately, it was clear that the experts had been right. Eala came out on fire, as she put it herself in the post-match interview. She broke Paolini twice in quick succession to go 5-1 up, the crowd rising with every winner, every error from Paolini, every moment where the weight of the atmosphere seemed to press down harder on the defending tournament champion and lift Eala further. In that first set, her serve, historically the weakest part of her game, was dominant in a way that caught everyone watching by surprise. She landed 67% of her first serves and won an astonishing 86% of those points. She did not face a single break point in the entire opening set, not one. From a player who has navigated her career knowing that her serve is the area opponents will attack, posting those numbers in a first set against a top 10 player at a WTA 1000 event was a statement that went far beyond the score. She served out the set 6-1, and the celebration inside that stadium was deafening. The second set told a different and more complicated story, and honestly, it is the second set that made this performance truly meaningful, because winning a first set 6-1 against a struggling opponent can be written off as a good day against a player not at her best. What happened next is what separates a good performance from a defining one. Paolini, a former champion in Dubai, a player with a Grand Slam final on her resume, a competitor who has been in pressure situations on the biggest stages in the sport, did not go quietly. She could not win the first set back, but she was not going to hand over the second without a fight. She stayed in it. She found game after game. She manufactured a shift in momentum that pushed the match in a direction that gave Eala's supporters a few uncomfortable minutes. Eala took a 4-3 lead in the second set and then broke to 5-3. A comfortable straight sets win appeared to be seconds away. And then, in the ninth game, with Eala serving for the match, Paolini dug in and found something. She saved 3 match points. 3, held serve, then broke Eala back, and suddenly the set was level at 5-all, and Paolini had twice the chance to push the match to a third set as Eala faced 2 set points. The crowd that had been celebrating was now praying. The chanting of Eala, Eala, Eala kept coming from the stands, but underneath it was the kind of tension that only happens in close matches at big tournaments when everything is on the line and nobody is sure how it ends. And here is where Eala showed something that no ranking can measure and no statistic fully captures. She held. Under set point pressure, she held. She pushed the match into a tiebreak. And in the tiebreak, she said exactly the right thing to herself at exactly the right moment. She described it afterward with a clarity that was almost startling in its honesty. In the change of ends during the tiebreak, she looked up at the crowd. She saw Filipinos for days, as she put it, thousands of them. And she thought, how many of them are up there praying for me right now? And she decided in that moment that she had to give everything she had, not for herself, for them. That thought, in the middle of a tiebreak against a top 10 former champion in a near-capacity stadium in Dubai, is the kind of mental shift that great athletes learn to make. The pressure did not push her down. It pulled something out of her. The tiebreak was extraordinary. Each of the first 8 points ended with a winner. 8 consecutive winners. At 4-all, both players had played some of the highest quality tennis of the entire night. Eala held 4 more match points over the course of the breaker. Paolini saved 1. Then Eala stepped up, found her forehand, and hit a winner that sealed the match 6-1, 7-6 in the tiebreak at 5 in 1 hour and 40 minutes. The 5th match point, the one that finally landed. And when it did, what followed inside that 5,000-seat stadium and outside in the tennis village, where hundreds more Filipinos had gathered on beanbag chairs surrounded by Philippine flags, watching on screens because there was simply no more room inside, was a celebration that had nothing to do with a second-round result at a WTA 1000 event and everything to do with something much bigger than tennis. Chants of "Eala, Eala, Eala" rained down from every corner of the stadium. Flags waved, people embraced strangers. Outside in the village, the reaction was visible on the screens before the crowd inside had fully processed what had just happened. And then Eala grabbed the microphone and did what she has done in every city on this Middle East swing. She looked out at her people and she spoke to them directly, in Filipino, acknowledging them, thanking them, letting them know that she felt every single moment of their support and carried it with her into every point. She said she looked up and there were Filipinos for days. She said it was a blessing to play in atmospheres like that one. And then she said something that should be printed on every piece of tennis literature published in the Philippines for the next generation. She said she felt privileged and thankful to be introducing women's tennis as a new sporting world to a new demographic. She said she hoped it would inspire young girls and women of all ages to take up sports. That statement is bigger than a match result. That statement is a young woman who has already become the highest-ranked Filipino in tennis history, consciously taking on the responsibility of what she represents and turning it into a purpose. She is not just playing for rankings or prize money or individual achievement, though all of those things matter. She is playing for something she genuinely believes in, which is that sport has the power to open doors for people who were told those doors do not belong to them. And when you play with that kind of meaning behind every point, you find a way to hold under set point pressure in a tiebreak because giving up would mean something beyond just losing a match. Let us also spend a moment with the statistics from this performance because the numbers deserve their own conversation. This was Eala's third career top 10 win on the WTA Tour, and here's the detail that makes it even more impressive. All three of her top 10 victories have come in straight sets. The two losses she has suffered against top 10 opponents both went to 3 sets. That means she has a winning record against the top 10 of the world, and every single time she has beaten one of them, she has been efficient, ruthless, and clean enough to close it out in 2 sets. That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern of its own, a very different kind of pattern from the one Paolini was carrying into this match, and it tells you something real about where Eala's ceiling actually sits. She is now the first Filipino player in history to reach the round of 16 at the Dubai Tennis Championships since the event's inauguration in 2001. She is also the first Filipino to reach the round of 16 at multiple WTA 1000 or Tier 1 level events since the introduction of the tier format in 1990, following her breakthrough Miami Open semifinal run last year. She has victories over Madison Keys, Iga Swiatek, and now Jasmine Paolini, 3 players who have collectively won Grand Slam titles and sat inside the world top 3 at various points in their careers. She has beaten them all in straight sets, and she is 20 years old. Now let us talk about what comes next, because the round of 16 sets up a match against Sorana Cirstea of Romania, ranked number 32 in the world. This is not a comfortable draw. Cirstea is experienced, big serving, aggressive, and beat Eala in their only previous meeting in Madrid in 2024, taking the match in 3 sets. She also came through her second round match on the same day as the Paolini win with a clinical 6-1, 6-4 performance, so she arrives with momentum of her own. But here's the thing. Everything the experts said before the Paolini match is now amplified by the result. If they were calling Eala a clear favorite over a top 10 former Dubai champion, and that prediction came true in one of the most one-sided opening sets the tournament has seen in years, the conversation around this round of 16 match is going to be enormous. And the crowd in that stadium is not going to shrink. It is going to grow. Because this is what Alex Eala does now. She does not just win matches, she creates events. Every time she walks onto a court in the Middle East, she transforms a professional tennis tournament into a piece of national theater for the Filipino diaspora. The nearly 1 million Filipinos in the UAE do not need much encouragement to show up in force. They have been showing up all week. They were packed into the stands for her first-round win over Baptiste. They filled the center court for Paolini. They spilled out into the tennis village when there was no more room inside. And after a win like the one she produced on February 17th, after a result that the experts predicted and she delivered with the kind of composure that made it look almost inevitable, the energy around her next match is going to be extraordinary. This is also the moment to acknowledge what the Paolini result means for the broader conversation about Eala's place in the sport. Before this week, a section of the tennis media was still treating her breakthrough as a longer-term project, a player with obvious talent and extraordinary fan support who needed more time and more experience before being considered a genuine threat at the top end of WTA 1000 draws. That argument is now much harder to make. You cannot dismiss 3 straight-set wins over top 10 players as a developing player finding her feet. You cannot look at a 6-1 first set against a former Dubai champion and call it a fluke. You cannot stand in an empty stadium watching a second-round match between 2 top 20 players and then walk next door to see a packed center court roaring for someone ranked 47 and argue that the sport's commercial hierarchy is functioning correctly. Something has shifted. The experts saw it coming, the crowd confirmed it, and the scoreboard made it official.